Dear Nigerians, I bring you good wishes from President Muhammadu Buhari, who, as we all know, is away from the country on medical vacation. Today marks the second anniversary of our assumption of office, and we must thank the Almighty God not only for preserving our lives to celebrate this second anniversary, but for giving us hope and strength and confidence as we faced the challenges of the past 2 years. Our administration outlined 3 specific areas for our immediate intervention on assumption of office. These are security, corruption, and the economy. In the northeast of our country, the terrorist group Boko Haram openly challenged the sovereignty and continued existence of the Nigerian state, killing, maiming, and abducting, causing the displacement of the largest number of our citizens in recent history. Beyond the northeast, they extended their mindless killings as far away as Abuja, Kano, and Kaduna. But with new leadership and renewed confidence, our gallant military immediately began to put Boko Haram on the back foot. We have restored broken down relations with our neighbors, Chad, Cameroon, and Niger, allies without whom the war against terror would have been extremely difficult to win. We have reorganized and equipped our armed forces and inspired them to heroic feats. We have also revitalized the regional multinational joint task force by providing the required funding and leadership. The positive results are clear for all to see. In the last 2 years, close to 1 million displaced persons have returned home. 106 of our daughters from Chibok have regained their freedom after more than 2 years in captivity, in addition to the thousands of other captives who have since tasted freedom. Schools, hospitals, and businesses are springing back to life across the Northeast, especially in Borno State, the epicenter of the crisis. Farmers are returning to the farms from which they fled in the wake of Boko Haram violence. Finally, our people are getting a chance to begin the urgent task of rebuilding their lives. Across the country, in the Niger Delta and in parts of the North Central region, we're engaging with local communities to understand their grievances and to create solutions that respond to these grievances adequately and enduringly. President Buhari's new vision for the Niger Delta is a comprehensive peace, security, and development plan that will ensure that the people benefit fully from the wealth of the region. And we have seen to it that it is the product of deep and extensive consultations, and that it has now moved from idea to execution. Included in that new vision is the long overdue environmental cleanup of the Niger Delta, beginning with Ogoniland, which we launched last year. More recent threats to security, such as herdsmen's clashes with farmers in many parts of the country, sometimes leading to fatalities and loss of livelihoods and property, have also preoccupied our security structures. We're working with state governments and tasking our security agencies with designing effective strategies and interventions that will bring this menace to an end. We're determined to ensure that anyone who uses violence or carries arms without authority is apprehended and sanctioned. In the fight against corruption, we have focused on bringing persons accused of corruption to justice. We believe that the looting of public resources that took place in the past few years has to be accounted for. Funds appropriated to build roads, railway lines, and power plants, and to equip the military that have been stolen or diverted into private pockets must be retrieved and the culprits brought to justice. Many have said that the process is slow, and that is true. Corruption has fought back with tremendous resources, and our system of administration of justice has sometimes been slow. But the good news for justice is that our law does not recognize a time bar for the prosecution of corruption and other crimes, and we will not relent in our efforts to apprehend and bring corruption suspects to justice. We are also re-equipping our prosecution teams, and part of the expected judicial reforms is to dedicate some specific courts to the trial of corruption cases. We're also institutionalizing safeguards and deterrence. We have expanded the coverage of the Treasury Single Account, TSA. We have introduced more efficient accounting and budgeting systems across the federal government. We've also launched an extremely successful whistleblower policy. The efficiency unit of the Federal Ministry of Finance has succeeded in plugging leakages amounting to billions of naira over the last 2 years. We have ended expensive and much abused fertilizer and petrol subsidy regimes. We've taken very seriously our promise to save and invest for the future, even against the backdrop of our revenue challenges, and we have in the last 2 years added $500 million to our Sovereign Wealth Fund and $87 million to the excess crude account. This is the very opposite of the situation before now, when rising oil prices failed to translate to rising levels of savings and investment. Admittedly, the economy has proven to be the biggest challenge of all. But let me first express just how concerned we have been since this administration took office about the impact of the economic recession on our citizens. Through no fault of theirs, some companies shut down their operation. Others downsized, people lost jobs, and had to endure rising food prices. In some states, civil servants worked months on end without the guarantee of a salary, even as rents and school fees and other expenses continued to show up like clockwork. We have been extremely mindful of the many sacrifices that you've had to make over the last few years. And for this reason, this administration's work on the economic front has been targeted at a combination of short-term interventions to cushion the pain, as well as medium to long-term efforts aimed at rebuilding an economy that is no longer helplessly dependent on the price of crude oil. Those short-term interventions include putting together a series of bailout packages for our state governments to enable them bridge their salary shortfalls, an issue that the President has consistently expressed his concerns about. We also began the hard work of laying out a framework for our social intervention program, the most ambitious in the history of the country. One of the first tasks of the Cabinet and Economic Management team was to put together a strategic implementation plan for the 2016 budget, targeting initiatives that would create speedy yet lasting impact on the lives of Nigerians. Indeed, much of 2016 was spent clearing the mess we inherited and putting the building blocks together for the future of our dreams, laying a solid foundation for the kind of future that you deserve as citizens of Nigeria. In his budget presentation speech to the National Assembly last December, President Buhari outlined our economic agenda in detail and assured that 2017 would be the year in which you would begin to see tangible benefits of all the planning and preparation work. It is my pleasure to note that in the 5 months since he delivered that speech, we have seen tremendous progress, as promised. Take the example of our social investment program, which kicked off at the end of 2016. Its homegrown school feeding component is now feeding more than 1 million primary school children across 7 states and will be feeding 3 million by the end of the year. The N-Power, another component, has engaged 200,000 unemployed graduates, none of whom needed any connections to be selected. Beneficiaries are already telling the stories of how these initiatives have given them a fresh start in their lives. Microcredit to 1 million artisans, traders, market men and women has also begun, while conditional cash transfers, which will eventually reach 1 million of the poorest and most vulnerable households, has also begun. Roads and power projects are going on in every part of the country. In rail, we are making progress with our plans to attract hundreds of millions of dollars in investments to upgrade the existing 3,500 kilometers narrow gauge network. We have also, in 2017, flagged off construction work on the Lagos-Ibadan leg of our standard gauge network, and we are close to completing the first phase of Abuja's mass transit rail system. In that budget speech in December, the President announced the takeoff of the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative. Today, 5 months on, that initiative, the product of unprecedented bilateral cooperation with the government of Morocco, has resulted in the revitalization of 11 blending plants across the country, the creation of 50,000 direct and indirect jobs so far, and in the production of 300,000 metric tons of NPK fertilizer, which is being sold to farmers at prices significantly lower than what they paid last year. By the end of 2017, that fertilizer initiative would have led to foreign exchange savings of $200 million and subsidy savings of 60 billion naira. The initiative is building on the solid gains of the Anchor Borrowers Program launched in 2015 to support our rice and wheat farmers as part of our move towards guaranteeing food security for Nigerians. All of this is evidence that we are taking very seriously our ambition of agricultural self-sufficiency. I'm delighted to note that since 2015, our imports of rice have dropped by 90%, while domestic production has almost tripled. Our goal is to produce enough rice to meet local demand by 2019. In April, the President launched our Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which built on the foundations laid by the Strategic Implementation Plan of 2016. The plan has set forth a clear vision for the economic development of Nigeria, and I'll come back to this point presently. Another highlight of the President's budget speech was our work around the ease of doing business reforms. As promised, we have since followed up with implementation and execution. I'm pleased to note that we're now seeing verifiable progress across several areas, ranging from our new visa on arrival scheme to reforms at our ports and regulatory agencies. The President also promised that 2017 would see the rollout of executive orders to facilitate government approvals, support procurement of locally made goods, and improve fiscal responsibility. We have kept that promise. This month, we issued 3 executive orders to make it easier for citizens to get the permits and licenses they require for their businesses, to mandate government agencies to spend more of their budgets on locally produced goods, and to promote budget transparency and efficiency. The overarching idea is to make the government agencies and government budgets work more efficiently for the people. The impact of our ease of doing business work is gradually being felt by businesses small and large. Its successful takeoff has allowed us to follow up with the MSME clinics, our small business support program, which has taken us so far to Aba, Sokoto, Jos, and Katsina, and we expect to be in all other states in due course. Let me note at this point that several of our initiatives are targeted at our young people who make up most of our population, from N-Power to the technology hubs being developed nationwide, to innovation competitions such as the ASO Villa Demo Day and our various MSME support schemes. We will do everything to nurture the immense innovativeness and entrepreneurial potentials of our young people. We are a nation of young people and will ensure that our policies and programs reflect this. One of the highlights of our power sector recovery programs, which we launched in March, is a 701 billion payment assurance scheme that will resolve the financing bottlenecks that have until now constrained the operation of our gas suppliers and generation companies. Let me assure that you will soon begin to see the positive impact of these steps. Our Solid Minerals Development Fund has also now taken off, in line with our commitment to developing the sector. Because of our unerring focus on solid minerals over the last 2 years, the sector has, alongside agriculture, seen impressive levels of growth in spite of the recession. On the whole, just as the President promised in the budget speech, these early months of 2017 have seen the flowering of the early fruit of all the hard work of our first 18 months. We opened the year with an overwhelmingly successful Eurobond offer, evidence of continuing investor interest in Nigeria. We have also launched the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan 2017-2020 to build on the gains of last year's strategic implementation plan. And the implementation of our 2017 budget will soon be signed into law. And this will bring added impetus to our ongoing economic recovery plans. In the 2016 budget, we spent 1.2 trillion naira on infrastructure projects, another milestone in the history of this country. Our 2017 budget will double that investment. That budget also provides for substantial investments to implement the rollout of industrial parks and special economic zones, as well as our social housing program. The industrial parks and economic zones will fulfill our ambition of making Nigeria a manufacturing hub, while the Family Homes Fund of our social housing program will provide inexpensive mortgages for low-income individuals and families across the country. These plans offer yet more evidence that we are ramping up the pace of work, the work of fulfilling all that we promised. In the next 2 years, we will build on the successes of the last 2. We have demonstrated a willingness to learn from our mistakes and to improve on our successes. The critical points that we must address fully in the next 2 years are agriculture and food security, energy, which includes power and petroleum, industrialization, and transport infrastructure. Every step of the way, we'll be working with the private sector, giving them the necessary incentives and the right environment to invest and do business. Our vision is for a country that grows what it eats and produces what it consumes. It is for a country that no longer has to import petroleum products and develops a lucrative petrochemical industry. Very importantly, it is for a country whose fortunes are no longer tied to the price of a barrel of crude, but instead to the boundless talent and energy of its people, young and old, male and female, as they invest in the diverse areas of our economy. And that vision is also for a country where the wealth of the many will no longer be stolen or reserved for a few, and where the impunity of corruption, whether in the public or private sectors, will no longer be standard operating practice. A land rid of bandits and terrorists. As citizens, you all deserve a country that works, not merely for the rich or connected, but for everyone. And our promise to you is that we will, with your support and cooperation, take every step needed to create that country of our dreams. We also know that this journey will of necessity take time, but we will not succumb to the temptation to take shortcuts that ultimately complicate the journey. We did not find ourselves in crisis overnight, and we do not expect overnight solutions to our challenges. The most important thing is that we are on the right path, and that we will not deviate from it, even in the face of strong temptation to choose temporary gain over long-term benefit. As the President has summed it up, and I quote, "The old Nigeria is slowly but surely disappearing, and a new era is rising," end of quote. And so we commemorate this second anniversary of our administration with confidence and optimism. I firmly believe that we have put the most difficult phase behind us, and we are witnesses to the ever-increasing intensity of the light at the end of the tunnel. We ask for your continued cooperation and support to enable us realize all of our best intentions and ambitions for Nigeria. On our part, we'll continue to carry you along on this journey, to speak to you, to explain the challenges, and to share our vision. And while we all daily preoccupy ourselves with pursuing the Nigerian dream, which is the desire to better our lives and circumstances vigorously and honestly, it is inevitable that grievances and frustration will arise from time to time. This is normal. What is not normal or acceptable is employing these frustrations as justification for indulging in discrimination or hate speech, or hateful conduct of any kind, or for seeking to undermine by violent or other illegal means the very existence of the sovereign entity that has brought us together as brothers and sisters and citizens. Nigeria belongs to all of us. No one person or group of persons is more important or more entitled than the other in this space that we all call home. And we have a responsibility to live in peace and harmony with one another, to seek peace and constitutional means of expressing our wishes and desires, and to resist all who might seek to sow confusion and hatred for their own selfish interests. Before I end this speech, let me ask for your continued prayers for the restoration to full health and strength and the safe return of our President. I congratulate you all on today's commemoration of this important day in the democratic calendar of our country. Nigeria is on a journey of greatness, and together we shall arrive at the destination of our dreams. May God bless you all and bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.